Exploring the unknown, how do the secrets of the universe define our future? You may just heard the LinkedIn live stream here chime in for a second. We're also out there on LinkedIn. Thank you for joining us to discuss this huge topic. And to get us into the mood today, I have the special honor to welcome someone on Dubai Future Horizons who many of you well know as the curator of the Dubai Future Forum and the head of Foresight Networks at Dubai Future Foundation, a community builder at heart. So happy she's back here on Horizons. Iman Abed Al-Qadi, welcome to the show.
Hello, how are you guys? Nice to see you all back at Dubai Future Horizons. Very exciting.
How are you?
I'm good. Excited. Am I allowed to say that? I know it's still 6 months to go, so I have to contain the excitement, but excited. We're 6-month mark, so let's do this.
The frenzy has officially begun. Is that fair to say?
I'm not sure the frenzy ever ends, if I'm perfectly honest. But yes, the frenzy has officially started, certainly for the 2025 season. So super excited to see where the frenzy takes us this year.
Well, when we prepared the session for today, you said, I want to be on and I have a special announcement to make. And I said, that's amazing. So what did you bring here?
I brought a new theme. Drum roll for the...
Shalisa, can we have a drum roll?
Yes, drum roll. For the 2025 edition. I should have told the DJ that I needed a drum roll. But anyways, it's okay. So super excited. There's a new theme for this year. We've basically decided that for every year of the forum, we're going to swap out one of the themes, not to suggest that, not all themes are super important. It was a very difficult decision to make because anybody that knows where I'm passionate about when it comes to research and futurist thinking, it is around futuring nature. And that was the theme that we had to swap out. So what we've decided to do with futuring nature is to embed it across the different themes and instead have a new theme on exploring the unknown, which of course is today's topic on the Dubai Future Horizons. Exploring the unknown, just very briefly, is essentially that, exactly what it sounds like, is exploring everything we don't know. But most people think about astronauts and they think about space. But for us, we want to look at different dimensions. And I'm not going to tell you quite yet what the dimensions are, because I feel like it'll, the next question that I have for everybody here, it's like cheating on a test. But we've pasted the link here onto the chat so people can explore the theme and really, venture into the unknown with us for the 2025 edition.
And you have always on the website these beautiful kind of like big sub questions, which are in this case, what defines the edge of the unknown? How do we determine which frontiers are worth exploring? How does expanding our understanding of uncharted realms shape the way we navigate the future? Amazing. I love that about Dubai Future Forum. You never shy away from these like super big, hard questions, and there are always outcomes. And today, we also have a sort of a deadline, because I think it's exactly 1 week from now that you're closing submissions, right? So for everybody who has an idea for the forum, you can still submit, but it's only a few days more.
Yes. So June 8th. We've got Eid coming up next week for those that are celebrating Eid in the region. So we're giving people a nice break and then telling us that's the deadline is Eid. So make sure you submit your idea as soon as Eid is over. That's your one chance to tell us what you think and to really just be part of the curation process. One thing that Isabella and Isabella's also here on the call today or on the podcast. One of the things that we are super mindful this year for the forum, but then also for years to come, is that, if for the forum to kind of sustain itself, we really want to make sure that it meets the demands and the research interests and the thinking in the futures community. So this is really a chance for people to tell us what they think, what they're exploring in the different themes, and how they'd like to participate in sessions. And no idea is bad, no idea is too big, too small. If you know anything about Dubai, you can never be too big. So please let us know what you think and get involved.
And Georgina just posted in the chat, submitted mine last week. Woohoo. And Kai said, submitted mine yesterday. Do it.
Wonderful. Excellent. Glad to hear it.
And it just format-wise, you're completely open as well, because we get questions about that. So talks,
We've
workshops,
we've actually
presentations?
expanded on the formats for this year. So last year typically was just panel discussions and keynotes and fireside chats. We've now added games to the options that people can submit. We've also added VR experiences, and that's something that's also new. Maybe that's the second announcement for the forum, is that we will be having a room dedicated to VR experiences this year at the forum. So certainly if people have any immersive experiences or experiential futures that they'd like to kind of bring into the forum, please don't shy away from suggesting them. There are options when you fill in the submission form, there are options to tell us around, costs that are implications that are to these VR experiences or anything like that. So feel free to let us know as much information as possible, and we'll look into it and see what's possible for this year.
I'm so excited already. Neil is writing submissions coming this week, rocket emoji.
Woohoo!
And Kai
Neil,
says
we're
you can
excited,
also
Neil.
Kai says you can also nominate a speaker. Not sure if people realize that. So true.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
Aman, I realize there's a lot to talk about when it comes to the forum. We also, when people signed up for today's session, a lot of people said when we asked what would you like to see discussed, they said we want to know more about the themes of this
Mhm.
year. And you are doing something that you have never done before today on Horizons. You're opening a Q&A. I want to call it Aman's Cafe because you're
Ooh,
an amazing host.
fancy.
So
All right.
Aman's Cafe opens on the full hour when we end our session with our guest,
Okay.
and we
As
will
long as
keep
it's
it
not
open.
recorded, I'm okay with that.
Okay, good to know. We will stop the recording, stop the live stream, and we will then get all your questions answered about the forum on the full hour of today's Horizon. So stay in the room if you would like to know something from Aman. This is a unique chance. Aman on is always busy, and it's hard to ask her questions at any hour of the day. So that she's here today is a really special chance. Just want to put that out there. And Aman, you also brought a question for everyone, which is also a
Yeah.
first. What would you like to know from this amazing community?
So all this talk about exploring the unknown, I'd like to hear from you guys. What is the biggest unknown to humanity in your minds? Like what do you think of when you think of the unknown and that that thing that's the unknown to humanity? So please share that on the, I think we're doing a Mentimeter, are we? Yeah, we're doing a
Yes.
Mentimeter. So please share that.
Okay, another easy question to kick us off here. What is the biggest unknown to humanity? You just saw the Menti pop up. Liz, our amazing producer, just posted the Menti link in the chat, so you can click that link and contribute. We give you a little bit of music to respond to this. And Aman, I'm not going to ask you what you think about this question, but why do you want to know?
I can't tell you. Let's see first what people say, and then I'll tell you. But I think it's just, I mean, just very, broadly, I'm just curious to know if what we're thinking about when we're thinking about exploring the unknown as we're
Mhm.
curating these sessions for the forum, if we're on the right track. So I'm just curious to see what people have to say.
And
As I
yeah.
mentioned earlier, most people the first answer that usually comes to people's mind is like space or like, something around planets. So I'm just curious to see what other
Ha.
people might have to say. So
Yes, and the crowd knowledge is coming together. I love this community so much. There's always people who think deeply in a split second and then bring that to our conversation. The nature of consciousness, identities, have we overdrawn our environmental balance? The mystery of birth of life, life after death. How will humanity awaken into active, intentional participation in a global ecosystem of humanity? Our inner self collectively manifesting, the ocean, lack of love. Will humans still be viable on Earth in 20 years? Energy efficiency, heritage. What is heritage really? Iman, anything that stands out to you when you look or hear these contributions?
yeah, love this. So for us, the unknown for the forum is split into four different sort of sub-themes. One is around the oceans, so anything that is essentially in water. The other unknown for us is, as I mentioned, space. The third unknown is ecosystems, and this is one of the reasons why we brought Elodie here on the podcast. Is this relationship that we have with animals, with land, anything that is kind of on Earth, I would say. And the fourth one, which I think is going to be super exciting to explore for this year at the forum, is our consciousness, our minds, right? So we're looking to run a couple of sessions on this topic. And so, yeah, those are the 4 sub-themes. And I see that people have already kind of, there's some hints to that here in the answers. So I'm happy to see that there is alignment in the way that we're thinking, and then the way that the futures community also wants to explore these topics.
So oceans, ecosystems, our minds, and what did I forget? Space. Okay, so those are the 4 unknowns, and we're touching at least 2 of those today. Just getting a little bit of dipping our toe into it today on Horizons. Thank you for sharing that, Iman. Super exciting to see what comes out of the submissions and what is happening at the forum this year. Games, VR, so many new things. And again, at the end of the hour, on top of the hour, Iman is here with the team to answer any questions that you might have. For now, I am saying thank you, Iman, and I will now ask our guests that question that Iman just put into the room. Our guests today are 2 people who chose as their profession to explore the unknown. So that alone, I am so amazed of. They are both explorers, but explorers of vastly different worlds. And I want to start on Earth. Our first guest uncovers the secrets of animal self-medication through her groundbreaking work with wild chimpanzees in Uganda. An Oxford-trained primatologist and visual storyteller, she weaves science and art through documentary films and visual narratives. We'll see some of that in a minute. She's currently planning her next scientific expedition to the Peruvian Amazon. She's also an Explorers Club 50 honoree in the class of 2025. So honored to have her on Horizons. Welcome, Dr. Elodie Freymann. Elodie, good to have you with us.
Thanks for having me.
How are you?
I'm really good. I'm happy to be here.
Elodie, do you have a spontaneous response to what Iman just asked? What is the biggest unknown to humanity? Anything spontaneous?
Yeah, one of the answers really spoke to me, the one about have we overdrawn our environmental balance? That's really what I think of too. I think of, do we as humans possess within us the ability to construct a sustainable future for ourselves in which we find a balance with the natural world?
Yeah, thank you for saying that. And I feel like in your work, all of what you just said resembles in what you do. So thank you for being here. And your counterpart is a little less focused on Earth, still living on Earth, I have to say, but is rather focused on space, a space architect, an industrial designer based in San Francisco. She's dedicated to solving global challenges. This unites you both with breakthrough hardware design. This is what she focuses on. A co-founder of Nonfiction, she leads projects across various industries, and I found examples from neurotech wearables to deep space food systems to medical engineering and microgravity. I'm so amazed by our guests today. And here is your counterpart, Elodie, Phnam Bagley. Phnam, I'm so glad you're on Horizons. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Felix. And I cannot wait to have a conversation with Elodie, because it seems like we come from completely different worlds, but I see so many commonalities already.
And you're meeting for the first time today. So this is the power of Horizons, bringing you together. And now we're going to do a little experiment that we love doing here. We want to get everybody on stage for a second and do a little bit of a mic test. So I mean it. You are now allowed to switch on your microphone, go off mute, and say hi to our guests and to each other. So wherever you are right now, if it's comfortable for you, switch your camera on, switch your microphone on, and say hi in your favorite language. Be loud, be optimistic. Let's crash this Zoom all together. Hello, Horizons community. Where are you? Say hi.
Hello.
Good morning.
Hello. Good morning.
Good
evening.
Our guests today, Elodie and Phnam, usually living dangerously, or at least wildly in wild habitats. I hope you feel welcome and at home here on Horizons. I hope you feel the warmth of this community. We have posted a really big question to everyone in the room in the beginning. What is the biggest unknown to humanity? And I would like to just have a look together, Elodie and Phnam, once again at what our community has responded, because the crowd knowledge here is impressive. And if we just look at the depth of responses here, Phnam and Elodie, is there anything that responds because you're basically dedicating your work to it when you look at the responses here? Phnam, I'm going to ask you first.
I think everything here is so incredibly relevant. Death, I saw that a few times. The unknown of what happens after life is over, even though that bridge between life and death is redefined every few years, it feels like. What am I seeing here? A lot of things related to the environment. And I think that's one of the themes that both Elodie and I are going to have in common. As we travel farther in the universe physically, or as we look to the past or to how we've been living on this planet and how our cousins have been living on this planet for so long, how are we going to understand, explore, extract insights from the science and the research to make us understand all the things that we don't have answers to yet. So
And
it's
if I would,
fascinating.
sorry, and if I would ask you, Phnam, what is the biggest unknown to humanity? What would you say?
For those in the room who are familiar with the Kardashev kind of like types of civilization, so there's type 1, type 2, type 3. There's also type 4 and more. But the idea that our civilization might in the future be able to harness the energy from our galaxy or from our sun or from our planet. So the planet will be type 1, the sun will be type 2, and the galaxy will be type 3. Is that a future that we're inching towards slowly? Can we do that sustainably? Can we, grow as a population of humans and, other species on Earth or outside of Earth in a way that makes that possible before extinction?
I just shared the link to the Kardashev scale in the chat here. Thank you for bringing that up, and thank you for sharing your outlook. Elodie, if I would ask you what is the biggest unknown to humanity, what would you respond?
I mean, I was seeing some great ones in here, like what we cannot see, and I think for me, I tried to be more positive. I don't want to think there's one response that was talking about, will we still be viable in 20 years? And that is my initial response. But I think instead I'm trying to sort of change perspectives and ask how, as human beings, we can make ourselves viable. And for me, that question is very much grounded in the natural world. Can we make ourselves as a species sustainable on this planet? Can we share this world with all of the other non-human animals that are inhabitants here?
Thank you for saying that and for giving it an optimistic spin. I think this is kind of an invitation to ask you about what you're doing, because I said it in the beginning and I kind of rattled it off in your bio. Yeah, groundbreaking work with wild chimpanzees in Uganda. I mean, it sounds great, but it's so hard to imagine because so few of us have had a chance to even be in an environment that you have spent years in. So please help us understand how your kind of exploration works. And you have brought us some B-roll footage here, some raw footage. So while we look at how you are exploring the unknown, tell us what you're doing and how futuring works in an environment that's not really human.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, thank you, Felix. So basically what I do, it's somewhat unusual. I work in a field called zoopharmacognosy, which is a long and hard to pronounce way of describing the field of animal self-medication. So how non-human animals take medicine in the wild. And so far, my research has been based in the amazing Budongo forest, which is a beautiful forest in Western Uganda. That's full of all sorts of incredible plant life, animal life, sounds, smells. And I spent some time there doing my PhD studying the wild chimpanzee population and really trying to get to the heart of this mystery, which I found fascinating for many, many years, which is what is in the wild chimpanzee medicine cabinet? What is in their forest pharmacy? What are they using to stay healthy in the wild? And so throughout my research, I have found some pretty amazing plants. that the chimpanzees are seeming to target when they're sick or when they're wounded, injured. And some of these plants have really, really interesting pharmacological properties and compounds in them. And in some of these cases, these medicinal plants are already used by local communities that live along the forest edge with the chimpanzees, so a shared medicinal repertoire with human beings nearby. But some of these plants that I found also had properties that were previously unknown to science. So this raises a really interesting further question. By studying non-human animals like chimpanzees, can we hack into non-human medicinal knowledge systems to uncover what's in the chimpanzee medicine cabinet that can be useful for us as well? So we don't have money or time, frankly, to test all of the trees that are on this planet or all the medicinal resources that are on this planet. But by learning from animals like chimpanzees, who are our closest, one of our closest living relatives, we're able to uncover potential new medicines, which can be really helpful for drug discovery. And drug discovery is going to be incredibly important as we move into this new age of future global pandemics and antibacterial drug resistance. And we're going to need to work really fast to find new medicines. And this could be one way to do it. And to answer your question about futuring in these wild places, there's this catch, a big catch, and this is where my research is beginning to shift to. So I have a new project that I'm launching, which is geared in a slightly new direction for me, still on animal medicinal plant use, but this is where the futuring comes in. The more I learned about animal medicinal plant use, the more my attention was drawn to some really important ethical loopholes that remain open, in my opinion. And so I've been looking and thinking a lot about the future ethical implications of this topic, zoopharmacognosy. So there are currently protocols in place, and they took too long to be put in place, but they protect against the commercial biopiracy, so stealing of human community traditional knowledge systems. And what this means, these protocols, like, for example, the Nagoya Protocol, what it does is it protects people from having their traditional medicinal knowledge stolen by corporations and then marketed for profit. But no such protocols or protections exist for non-human animals. And so why is this a problem? It's a problem because if we continue to find that non-human animals, like the chimpanzees that I studied, have traditional ecological knowledge systems, meaning knowledge they acquire from others in their community about the natural world, and they pass on that knowledge across generations. If they have these traditional ecological knowledge systems, this could mean that these non-human animal communities suddenly could have a target on their back for exploitation. And their resources could be taken, and their habitats could be destroyed, and their medicine cabinets could be depleted. So that would all be in the name of drug discovery for us humans. And what I want to look into is, what would a protocol look like to protect this from happening? How can we prevent this potential destruction in the future? And so my new project, which Felix mentioned, which I'm launching in the Peruvian Amazon, and which I'm currently fundraising for, is going to be really trying to discover, first of all, the first cases of self-medication in this region of the world, and simultaneously working on ways to make these kinds of future discoveries ethical.
Wow. Everybody, just let that sit with everyone for a moment. The reactions in the chat are super interesting as well. Some of us are just still exploring what you're doing there and just saying, I love this and I love seeing this and this is so cool. And Ida, who's a futurist, wrote, this is wild. I didn't even know animal and non-human medical knowledge was a thing. H. Viga on the other side already went a step further and said, what you were just talking about, I would love to hear more about how you balance this knowledge against possible exploitation. And I think you brought a question to the room. You are actually going to challenge everybody in the room here, the futurists, the foresight practitioners, the researchers, this community, about your topic. So what would you like to know from everybody, Elodie?
So my question is, should we protect non-human traditional knowledge and culture? And if so, I'm curious to hear why you think that that is important.
Such an easy question, as always. On Horizons, we give you really, really tough and crucial future things to discuss and think about. And we would love to hear your opinion. We give you a little bit of music to think. And also, Elodie, we just heard that your next project is focusing around a protocol. But why are you asking this question to everyone in the room here? What are you actually interested in finding out?
I'm asking it because I have gotten some really polarizing responses to this question. So I think a lot of people want to know off the bat why non-human animals intrinsically deserve the protection of their traditional ecological knowledge and cultures. And of course, there are people that very rightly say we have to make sure that, I mean, that everyone is protected and you have to focus on humans. And I find that not mutually exclusive, but a lot of people, that's their first response, is humans first. And I'm curious what people, this community of futurists and people thinking about the future, whether or not they agree with that.
So far, I see a lot of yeses. Yes, we can learn so much, but we need to respect other species. Yes, because we're one connected through unified field, and we should be one with nature and co-create with nature. We were gifted self-awareness on this planet by the rest of the planet, which is mostly non-human. Hence, the answer must be yes. So when you look at the responses here, this community seems to be very strongly on the yes side. What do you tell people who are on the no side of things?
Oh, well, I'm super heartened to see this. This is really, really incredible. And I'm so happy that this resonates with people and people think that the non-humans deserve this kind of protection. When I talk to people that are on the no side, I really just try to say, again, it's not mutually exclusive. We're not placing anyone over another. And I think it's completely entangled. I think that's my first response, is that by protecting non-human medicinal cultures, for example, we are also protecting our own human medicinal cultures. We're protecting the wild places and spaces where all of these amazing plants exist, and we couldn't exist without them. So there's no hierarchy in nature, I strongly believe. And I think that by protecting our neighbors, we're protecting ourselves as well.
Wow. And a very short answer here that I would just like to read is, some of my best friends are non-humans. And I think that sums up what a lot of you are responding very strongly with in the chat here. Caitlin just wrote in the Zoom chat, lovely answers. This is really cool to read, everybody. And thank you for contributing. I'm so glad, Elodie, that you were asking this question. And Phnam, before we dive into your work, would you like to reflect on what you just saw? Because you just saw the videos like everybody else for the first time, and you just heard Elodie speaking about her work for the first time.
Yeah, like every time I meet someone who's doing such incredible, unique work, I'm reconsidering my own career, and I'm trying to find a way to like slide a little bit closer to theirs. Now I want to, find a way to connect space and, whatever medicine work I'm doing with non-human medicine, which, before you introduced us, I had never heard of before. But now that it's in front of me, I'm like, yeah, obviously, because the early humans probably started that way as well. They probably, start testing different plants, putting them on wounds, chewing them, feeling better in certain ways, dying in other scenarios, and learning from that, right? It's a lot of trial and error. And it'll be very interesting also, since we have a little bit of common language. My understanding is that we have a little bit of common language with chimpanzees, so we can start exploring, are they feeling better when they try this plant, or are they feeling nauseous, or are they feeling this and that? And I'm actually very interested in how we're going to start discovering animal medicine, non-human medicine from animals that we don't understand, we can't communicate with, right? I don't know, like fungi or worms or bacteria or things like that. Like they probably found a way to survive in places that are hostile to them. in ways that we don't even have words for. And I find that fascinating.
Places we don't have words for, medicine we don't have words for. Can you share one example, Elodie, of a non-human medicine that you have found that we have never been using?
Yeah, sure. So one of the medicinal resources that I focused on and I think got pretty obsessed with over the course of my research in Uganda was this amazing tree called Alstonia bunai. And this tree is this massive, beautiful tree. It has almost like a ribbon-like shape. Um, and what I was finding was that the chimpanzees in the communities I was working with were eating it in really unusual circumstances and oftentimes when they were sick. And I went into the local nearby communities that lived near the forest edge, and I talked to some healers. And as it turned out, this tree is an incredible medicine for a number of different diseases, one of which is malaria, which is a very common illness in the region. So it's this shared medicinal resource. And I think that really, I don't know, it just highlighted for me also this entanglement that we share these medicines with our neighbors and our primate cousins, and it's important for all of us to keep it around.
We share it without even knowing. And thank you for taking us into your unknown, Elodie. The reactions in the chat are strong. And Phnam, Iman just responded to you by saying, imagine how I feel curating a forum with people from 100 countries that all have these amazing jobs and do these crazy things. I felt humbled preparing for the session, just reading through what you both do. I was like, this is incredible. Like, what? What about me? It always comes back to why are we not doing such cool things? Now we're even lifting off from Earth, and we're so glad that the Dubai Future Forum gives us the chance to include space again. Last year there were lots of astronauts. This year we're going into space in a completely different way. And Phnam, you're a space architect. Honestly, you're the first space architect I ever met. So if you tell someone in a coffee shop, co-working space, or at the forum what you do you get a usual response to your job title?
Yes, for sure. The most common response is I don't understand, and immediately followed by I don't believe you. Um, Especially when I tell them that I've been doing this for 20 years. So a space architect is someone who designs the environments in which astronauts live and work. And that environment can be, in microgravity, which is when you're floating. And that happens when you are, for example, on low Earth orbits, orbiting around the Earth, where the International Space Station is currently is. Or you can live on the surface of the Moon, surface of Mars, and other places in the solar systems and beyond. And so what got me into this field is actually very unusual, because when you talk to the vast majority of people who work in the space industry, they will tell you, well, I grew up dreaming of becoming an astronaut. So that was not me. I watched astronauts living, aboard the space shuttle, International Space Station, Mir, all these missions that were on television when I was a kid, and thought that the way they lived was horrible. And that maybe I could have a career where I could do something about it. So I actually went to school, both in France and the United States, to study space design and architecture. And here I am.
I just heard yesterday from someone who is working a space startup that even feeding an astronaut costs about $30,000 a day or something. And as you said, it's not great food, right, for that amount.
No. And as we go farther in deep space is essentially like beyond the moon. The cost of things is incredible for space, because you have to lift off all of that weight and volume to space, and lifting off things through rockets from Earth is still incredibly expensive, even though in the last I would say 10, 15 years, the cost has reduced a lot thanks to reusable rockets, right? But, in the era of space shuttle, I can't remember, it was like $80,000 per kilogram if you lift it off from Earth. And now it's like, I think it's between $1,200 and $2,000, depending on what it is. So it's a huge reduction in cost, which allows us to send more things, but also to send a variety of things, right? We're not only sending humans, as you say, we're sending food, we're sending all the life support systems that are necessary for them to stay alive. We're also starting to have serious conversation about the fact that living in space is more than just surviving. We want people to thrive up there. We want people to be able to be productive and to do their scientific research in a way that that actually accelerates what's going on Earth. So many opportunities that are very interdisciplinary. Because for a long time, the space industry was almost solely focused on science and engineering, that's where it needed to start for obvious reasons. But now designers, artists, storytellers, researchers of different kinds, like pharmaceutical companies, even, AI, semiconductor companies, material companies are all interested in what space has to offer because it gives us environments and materials that are simply not available for us on this planet.
Interesting. So when we talk about exploring the unknown, what is that unknown that you just mentioned? Things that are not available to us on Earth. Can you give us a few examples?
Yeah, one example that's I think relatable to everyone here is you all know what helium is the gas that you inhale and you have a funny voice after that. It's used in many industries. Science uses it a lot to do experiments, aerospace and defense for all everything. And the thing about the universe is that helium is the universe is very rich in helium, right? It's the second element on the tellable elements, and for some strange reason the surface of the Earth is very poor in helium. So that's why having access to helium is becoming more and more expensive. Now our neighbor, the moon, is full of helium-3 in particular. And now there's starting to be, some startups looking at exploiting helium that can be extracted from the regolith, which is that surface material on the moon. And to just give you an idea of how much of an economy that is, a kilogram of helium would cost $20 million. So if you go on the moon, you extract helium responsibly, hopefully, and you are able to collect 10 kilograms a year, you have a business. And obviously there's a lot more of that on the moon. So many opportunities out there to look at how we can, advance the way we live on this planet with resources that are available abundantly in the universe.
Fascinating. And it reminds me of the conversation that we had on Dubai Future Horizons at South by Southwest, where we talked about, well, with two astronauts, well, space is out here to kill you, but there's a lot of things that you can do in space that will massively improve our life on Earth. And you, when I ask you what would you like to know from everybody in the community, you also brought a fascinating question, a short, a sharp, and a really interesting one. What would you like to know from everybody here, Phnam?
So before I ask the question, I'd like to give everybody a little bit of a context. So I will talk you into what it feels like to live in space right now. So the average stay in space is about 6 months, right? We, for the most part, send professional astronauts who have been highly trained to live and survive and work in space, floating around for those 6 months. So what they do is that they work between, like 8 and 9, 10 hours a day. They sleep, about 7 hours a night. And the rest of the time they prepare food, they eat food, and get some work done, maintenance and things like that. So imagine you are an astronaut and you're doing all those things. The vast majority of astronauts look at the cupola, which is this like window, and they see the beauty of the Earth, right? A lot of astronauts will talk about this vantage point of the Earth as something that cannot be expressed in the videos and the photography that we bring back on Earth. There's nothing like it. And one of the wonderful things is when you look at the Earth from low Earth orbit is that you realize that the atmosphere of the Earth is very shiny, is very thin, and that our biosphere is really fragile in that sense, right? And so these astronauts will spend all of their free time, all of their meals just staring at the Earth and tracking where their house is and, realizing that there are no actual borders between countries and they don't understand why there are even wars and, like things like that. But but I realize, you know, as someone who designs not only how people live in space, but also what they're going to do with that time, is I'd like to ask the audience, if you go to space and you have to do all those things I just mentioned, there's going to be another like 4 or 5 hours of like nothing. What would you do in space during those 4 or 5 hours?
I love this question so much. So you're saying the astronauts, they don't even pay attention to what they're eating because they're just, you know, experiencing this live Google Maps moment where they're trying to find their house from space. And now we ask this question to you. If you would be up there, what would you do? I love this question so much, Fran. And it's one that immediately sparks the imagination and immediate responses. So space dancing, meditation, reading, interesting. I'd float and watch Earth get smaller and smaller and then wonder if anyone else out there has better coffee. A space future forum, Aman, putting that to you. Make art, reading and watching movies, learn a new language, think about Earth. This is so interesting. Stare into space. Okay, somebody's very honest. Space TV, just like caveman TV, but better. Observe reality from different perspectives, create games, solve big problems for people on Earth, meditate and connect with the universe, miss home. Love all this range of responses here. And Phnam, you asked this question. Why did you actually ask it? Like, you know that the answers are going to be all over the board. Why would you like to know?
I would like to know because it really illustrates the fact that the types of humans that we're going to continue sending to space are going to be more and more varied. Because for a long time, we really pre-selected astronauts to be a very narrow group of people, you know, the right stuff, as we used to call it. Usually, you know, like middle-aged, extremely healthy, ex-military, white male, you know, for a long time. And now it's diversified a little bit. And we're also including, you know, suborbital flights and shorter trips to space that don't require that much training. But as we send more and more people to space, just to give you an idea, like about 700 people have ever been to space and that's it. So when we go into the thousands, the 10,000s, the millions and so on, the diversity of people and the diversity of needs of those people is going to expand. And so people like me need to design these environments to allow for the whole of humanity to go to space. You know, people with disability, children, you know, pregnant women, you know, animals, pets, you know, all of these ecosystems we don't even know about because we're not even asking ourselves these questions. I want people to tell me what they want to do up there, and also change the minds of all of these people who traditionally only think about function. You know, we go to space because we explore. We go to space because we experience. We go to space because we exploit or we expand as a civilization. But I think there are also a lot of inner work, and I'm seeing here a lot of art, a lot of meditation and all that can happen by changing the perspective from being on this planet surrounded by these billions of humans and changing the vantage point to looking back at the Earth and understanding how fragile she is, and going farther in the universe and understanding what home actually becomes, and then going farther even, you know, in the future, where we go beyond the solar system, when we start exploring places that will take multiple generations to reach. You know, what is that going to mean for us as a species to go down a path like that?
What I hear from you, though, is that you're very certain about us. Now there will be more of us going to space, and there will be a foundation of people building something that we will then turn into a new culture, a new economy, a new ways to fulfill us, like we saw here in the responses. A lot of people were talking about very earthy things that fulfill us, right? Make art or meditate. So, but you're even sure, you said there will be people born in space?
Eventually. Now this is one of the big unknowns as well. Like, we don't know if that's biologically possible, physically possible, right? There are talks about ectogenesis, which is growing, you know, fetuses in artificial wombs outside of the body. ethically, we haven't been able to even start doing research in that I know of. But this kind of technology has been tested on Earth already, and it's a matter of like what kind of policies and what kind of ethical guidelines do we need to put in place for the research to be done properly in a way that is one makes sense from a human perspective, but also makes sense from an economic perspective, right? There needs to be a balance of those two things. Building in space is very much like building a city. You don't build a city overnight. You really have multiple generations of people bringing in culture, science, technology, innovation, buildings, architecture, all those things year after year, and then it becomes an ecosystem that we call a city. And I think the way we think about space is going to be the same thing. Now, what's interesting about space is there's so much, everything is unknown, right? We can collect all the data we want about radiation and all that, but for example, but until we're there, until we create the spacecraft that allow us to protect ourselves, until we have multiple generations of people living up there and kind of like accelerating our own evolution to adapt to living like this, we actually don't know. We don't know if it's possible, and we don't know if it even makes sense.
Well, Elodie, what would you do in space?
I love the question. It's so good. Thank you for that, Phnam. I think that for me, it's got to be painting. I think for me, I do a lot of translating of the things that I'm seeing through artwork. It's how I interpret the natural world. And it's actually informed a lot of my science, the way that I have a very bad memory, and the way that I learn to recognize plants when I'm out in the field is I paint them. And once I've painted them, I feel like I know them. And so I think trying to tackle painting space would be very overwhelming as a premise, but I think I'd have to give it a try.
Beautiful. And a lot of beautiful responses from all of you in the chat here. Very thoughtful pieces, as always. Eva is worrying about the ethical perspective of people being born outside the womb. But Isabel is actually writing, there's a lot of research on ectogenesis. I'm writing a foresight paper on it. So Phnam and Isabel, you should probably talk after the session. Adil is asking, if my son is born in space, which nationality does he have? This brings us to heritage, to post-national identities, a topic that we could also explore with both of you. And of course, the loneliness. How are we going to deal with that while building a foundation for maybe future generations? I wish we had 5 hours and not just 5 minutes left here with both of you. And I'm so glad that we might have the chance to see you in Dubai and continue and deepen the conversation there, because we really just dipped our toes into what you're doing, and it's so fascinating. I would like to close with someone that brings us all together. Learning about how unknowns are defining our future and how your exploration of these non-human places fits into that. Maybe we can now try to link that to the professions here in the room. Isabel just shared that she's, researching on some of the things that you're doing, but many of us maybe are asking, like, how does that connect with me, with what I do every day? And this is what I would like to ask both of you in the end, and I would like to ask all of you to close out the session today. What is the missing link between futurists and explorers? What can futurists and explorers learn from each other? I love the word explorers so much, and I think it fits both of you perfectly, Elodie and Phnam, but you have also other titles, other roles that you give yourself. But let's put you in the explorer bucket for now and ask both of you also what you think futurists and explorers and futurists can learn from each other. So we would love to see your questions on answers on Menti, as always. You can click the link in the chat or scan the QR code. But Phnam and Elodie, I would also like to hear from you. What do you think? Phnam, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think to me, futurists are people who use the imagination, research, the past and data to imagine where we're going. And explorers actually go there, right? And so how do we create tools for them to communicate with each other and to feed each other? Are there certain aspects of being a futurist that an explorer can use to explore even farther? And in the same way, are there ways that tools that explorers use for futurists to think about different perspectives that they traditionally don't even think about? But really, it's all about perspective, right? Like if you spend your entire career in medicine, for example, and then you don't really look about the world of the arts or emotions coming from animals or on a different on different continent, you're kind of like closing yourself to opportunities for insights that other people might not even see. So we're all explorers of different dimensions. And also when I think about the word explorer, a lot of people think about, someone who summits Everest or someone who like goes very deep into the ocean, which is very true.
You just summited the highest mountain in Bali, I learned.
I did. I tried to. Unfortunately, my legs gave out a little bit before, but it's a whole story. But I think as people who ask ourselves a lot of questions, there are many dimensions in which we explore. As a space architect, I always explore in time. What is something about the past that can inform me about the present or the future, or vice versa. Also, the dimension of scale, exploring in scale from the infinitely small, quantum things all the way to small matter, biological structures, all the way to humans and beyond, and things that are as big as the universe, which is something that our brain can't even fathom. There's also explorers of places, as I said, like top of the mountains or deserts, and also realizing that as we explore the universe, other planets, the solar system, that all of that is also nature. We have this like weird way of seeing nature as something that is green or natural or earth-based, but nature is also the rest of the universe. And we should see it that way. And then finally, exploring different dimensions in outer space, inner space, the individual and the collective, right? And how everything I just talked about can mix and match and open opportunities for new ways of thinking.
I think somebody just posted, aren't futurists and explorers the same? And I feel like you brought us a lot closer together. But I want to close with Elodie and maybe having a final look at what everybody just contributed before we hand over to Iman for the first Cafe Iman, where Iman and team are responding to all your questions about the Dubai Future Forum. We're going to open this in a minute. Elodie, I would like to give the final word to you because when I look at the responses here, they're really beautiful. Futurists are explorers of the imagination. Explorers are forging possible futures by uncovering the undiscovered. It's just one example. And I think, Elodie, you also have a very specific response. I remember asking you preparing for the session. You think there could be something done to bring explorers and futurists closer together. So what would you say? What is the missing link?
Well, I think for me, starting with what explorers and scientists, because that's often an overlapping category, can learn from futurists. I think that as an explorer, as a scientist, you have a mission that you're on. You have, your field, the place you're going for your field work. You have your incredibly niche scientific question that you're chipping away at over the course of your career. And you get put in a very disciplinized category. You get in a tunnel. You have the discipline, you have the methods you use, you have your hypothesis, and oftentimes that means that you have these blinders on. And it also means that often you're not encouraged to think creatively. You're kind of encouraged to just answer that question. So you're out in this beautiful natural world, natural place, natural space, and you're just focusing on the one behavior or, the one bird species. So I think that what we could learn as explorers and scientists from futurists is how to be creative, how to think beyond that question that we're asking. What are the ramifications? What are the implications of that finding? What happens when we actually find what we're looking for? And then on the flip side, I think futurists can learn. For me, I'll say what I fear about futurism and thinking too far in the ahead is that there's often this idea that progress is an advancement and momentum is the priority, and that it's progress for progress's sake. And what I think that often can do is take us out of the present and also encourage us to optimize when sometimes we don't have to. I think futurists can be reminded by explorers and scientists that in the natural world that we exist in today, there are things that move slowly. There are things that are not optimized. There are natural rhythms that aren't the most efficient. And that's not bad. And that's not necessarily a negative thing. And so I think that explorers and scientists can remind futurists that progress shouldn't necessarily be the goalpost, and that there are inefficiencies can be written in. And that's not bad, in my opinion.
Wow. And Drasko just added, we should combine the forward-thinking mindset of futurists with the adventurous spirit and practical skills of explorers. Another idea. While I would like to leave you with a quote that John posted in the chat, as for the future, your task is not to foresee it, but to enable it. But I just want to sound smart here because I'm not as smart as you both. Thank you so much for being on Horizons today. And you were amazing, wonderful, insightful, and we learned so much. There are calls in the chat to preserve what everybody has contributed, what you have said, the links that have been shared. We will, of course, do that and share it with all of you. But first of all, I wanted to say thank you and good luck on your explorations in a Peruvian forest, in space, or in the mountains of Bali, wherever they may take you. And thank you all for being here and for staying here. This was Horizons for today. We will be back later this summer.